The station shook violently as another explosion ripped through the outer hull. Commander Jake Morrison gripped the edge of the console, watching the structural integrity warnings flash red across every screen. They had maybe 10 minutes before the entire research facility tore itself apart. "We need those coordinates now," Jake shouted over the alarms. The Phyrexian historian Kelmath stood frozen before the ancient artifact, all four of his arms trembling. The crystalline tablet in his clawed hands pulsed with an eerie blue light, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe across its surface. "I cannot decipher it," Kelmath's translator chirped. "This is Old Tongue. Predates the Convergence War by millennia. No living being can read this script." Jake glanced at the countdown. 8 minutes. The artifact they'd discovered in the dead station's core was supposed to contain the location of the vault, the legendary repository of technologies from the extinct builder race, technologies that could end the current war, technologies that could save billions of lives. But without the coordinates, they'd found nothing but their own graves. "Let me see it," Jake said, crossing the debris-strewn room in 3 quick strides. Kelmath's optical organs widened. "Human. I have studied ancient languages for 3 centuries. The Council's best minds have examined fragments like this for generations. You cannot possibly—" Jake took the tablet anyway. The moment his fingers touched the surface, the symbols stopped moving. They locked into place, clear and readable. But something was wrong. The patterns looked familiar but backward, inverted, like you flipped the tablet over. The symbols rearranged themselves instantly, flowing into perfect, comprehensible patterns. Not in any language Jake knew, but somehow his brain processed them anyway, translating the geometric shapes into pure meaning. Coordinates, star charts, access codes. "You're holding it upside down," Jake said quietly. Kelmath made a choking sound. "That is impossible. The orientation markers, the gravitational sensors, they all indicated—" "They indicated wrong," Jake interrupted, his eyes scanning the flood of information. "Or maybe they indicated right for whoever built this thing. 6 minutes left. I need a star chart now." Lieutenant Chen rushed over with a holographic projector. Jake began reading off coordinates, his voice steady despite the station buckling around them. The numbers poured out faster than he could consciously process them. Somewhere in his mind, he wondered why this made sense to him. Why his human brain could parse what centuries of galactic scholarship could not. The vault's location materialized in the hologram, a brown dwarf system in the outer reaches, hidden in a debris field that every spacefaring race had written off as worthless. Of course, the builders had hidden their greatest treasures in plain sight, in a place no one would look because everyone assumed it had already been searched. "Got it," Chen said, downloading the data. "Transfer complete. Everyone to the escape pods," Jake ordered. "We have 4 minutes." Kelmath hadn't moved. He stared at Jake with an expression that the translator couldn't quite convey. "How did you know to invert it?" Jake was already running toward the exit. Humans invented writing on both flat and curved surfaces. "We learned early that perspective matters. Come on." They made it to the pods with 90 seconds to spare. The escape sequence felt like it took hours but lasted only seconds. Jake's pod rocketed away from the dying station, the others following in a scattered formation. Through the viewport, he watched the research facility collapse in on itself, consumed by the chain reaction they'd accidentally triggered when they'd activated the artifact. But they had what they came for: the location of the vault, the key to ending the war. Jake looked down at the tablet still clutched in his hands. In the pod's dim light, the symbols glowed softly, still readable, still making impossible sense to his human eyes. He wondered how many other relics were scattered across the galaxy, waiting for someone to simply look at them from a different angle. His communicator crackled to life. "Commander Morrison, this is Captain Hayes on the carrier Defiance. We have you on sensors. What's your status?" Jake smiled despite everything. "We found it, Captain. I'm transmitting coordinates now. And I think we just figured out why the builders left so much of their technology behind." "Why is that, Commander?" "Because they were waiting for someone stupid enough to try reading their instructions differently." Hayes laughed. "Only humans would consider that stupid instead of ingenious." Good work, Morrison. Get back here so we can chase down this vault before the Krell figure out what we're doing. The pods began their approach to the Defiance, a massive warship hanging in the darkness like a promise of safety. But Jake knew safety was temporary. They had the map, but now came the hard part, actually reaching the vault before the enemy did. Actually surviving whatever defenses the builders had left behind. Actually proving that humanity's strange way of looking at problems could be the edge the galaxy needed. He strapped himself in for docking and began studying the tablet more carefully. The symbols continued to reveal themselves layer after layer of information, warnings, instructions, histories of civilizations that had risen and fallen before humans had even discovered fire. And underneath it all, a message that made his blood run cold. Only the persistent may enter. Only the adaptable may survive. Only the different may inherit. The builders hadn't hidden the vault from everyone. They'd hidden it from anyone who thought like they did. They'd been waiting for someone new. Someone who saw the universe from an angle no one else considered. They'd been waiting for someone exactly like humanity. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud. Jake stood, tablet in hand, ready to brief the command staff. Ready to lead an expedition into the unknown. Ready to prove that sometimes the answer to an impossible problem was simply looking at it upside down. The war had just gotten interesting. The briefing room aboard the Defiance was packed with officers from a dozen different species. Jake stood at the head of the table, the builder tablet projecting a three-dimensional star chart into the air above them. Captain Laura Hayes sat to his right, her weathered face showing the strain of 6 months of constant combat. To his left, Commander Chen worked the holographic controls, highlighting specific regions as Jake spoke. "The vault is here," Jake said, pointing to a brown dwarf system designated only as catalog reference 8847J. Deep in the outer reaches. The system has been surveyed twice by Krell scouts and once by our own probes. All reports indicated nothing of value. Dead rocks, radiation, and debris. A Vrexian tactical officer, Chalice, leaned forward. Then why would the builders hide their greatest repository there? Because everyone looked and saw nothing, Jake replied. The perfect hiding place is one where people have already checked and moved on. Hayes pulled up a tactical display. Our problem is the Krell battle group currently stationed 3 systems away. They've been hitting our supply lines for weeks. If we redirect enough ships to reach the vault, they'll notice the fleet movement and investigate. Then we don't take a fleet, Jake said. We take one ship, small, fast, unremarkable. The Krell are looking for military maneuvers, not a single explorer vessel. One ship against whatever defenses the builders left behind. Shawley's translator carried a note of skepticism. "Commander, the builders were the most advanced civilization in galactic history. Their automated defenses destroyed entire invasion fleets during the Convergence War." Jake met the Vrexian's gaze steadily. The builders also left that tablet in a research station, waiting for someone to read it. They wanted someone to find the vault. The defenses will test us, but they won't be designed to kill indiscriminately. They'll be designed to filter out anyone who doesn't meet their criteria. Chen spoke up. "What criteria would that be, Commander?" "Adaptability." "Different thinking. The ability to see solutions others miss." Jake gestured to the tablet. "This artifact was readable the whole time. It just required someone to try something the previous researchers hadn't considered. I think the vault will be similar. Dangerous, yes, but solvable if we approach it correctly." Hayes stood studying the star chart. "What ship do you recommend?" "The Swift Current. It's a converted civilian science vessel. Looks harmless on sensors. Fast enough to outrun most Krell interceptors. Small crew complement, which means fewer people at risk." "You mean fewer people to lose when this goes wrong?" Shawley said flatly. "I mean fewer people needed to accomplish the mission," Jake corrected. "Captain, I need a pilot, an engineer, a xenoarchaeologist, and a security specialist. 5 people total, including myself." Hayes considered this for a long moment. Around the table, officers exchanged glances. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the recycled air. The war was going badly. The Krell offensive had pushed Alliance forces back across a dozen sectors. Civilian populations were evacuating en masse. Fleets were being ground down in battles of attrition no one could win. The vault represented hope, or it represented a dangerous distraction from the real fight. "You have your mission, Commander," Hayes said finally. "I'll assign you the Swift Current and give you priority selection for your team. But Morrison, understand this. If the Krell discover what you're doing, I won't be able to send help. You'll be on your own out there." "Understood, Captain." The meeting dissolved into logistics discussions. Jake remained at the table with Chen, reviewing personnel files on a datapad. They needed the best. People who could think under pressure. People who wouldn't panic when facing the unknown. "What about Lieutenant Sam Parker for pilot?" Chen suggested. "Top scores in evasive maneuvers, fought at the Battle of Keswick Nebula, and got his crew out when the flagship was destroyed." Jake pulled up Parker's file. 28 years old, military family, known for unconventional tactics that drove his commanding officers crazy but got results. "Good choice. Send him the brief." For xenoarchaeology, there's Dr. Lisa Grant. Civilian contractor, but she's decoded more builder artifacts than anyone in the Alliance. She was actually requesting assignment to study that tablet before we lost the research station. Even better, she'll understand what we're dealing with. "Engineering is trickier," Chen continued. "Most of our best engineers are assigned to fleet repair. We're running on skeleton crews as it is." "What about non-human engineers?" Jake asked. "The builders worked with multiple species. Their technology might respond better to someone with a different biological perspective." Chen's fingers danced across the datapad. "There's a Thalin engineer named Revik, served on mixed species crews for 15 years. Specializes in ancient power systems and energy matrices. He's currently assigned to station maintenance, so pulling him won't impact combat readiness. And for security? Sergeant Amy Collins, Marine, decorated combat veteran, trained in both human and xenocultural combat doctrines. She's pulled security detail on archaeological expeditions before, knows when to shoot and when to hold fire." Jake reviewed Collins's file. The woman's record was impressive. Multiple citations for bravery, expert marksman ratings, and, notably, a commendation for peacefully resolving a standoff with armed looters during an evacuation. She had judgment, not just firepower. Jake said, "I want everyone assembled on the Swift Current in 6 hours. We launch as soon as we're loaded and ready." Chen nodded and began transmitting the assignments. Jake returned his attention to the builder tablet, which now sat dormant on the table. He picked it up carefully, feeling the strange warmth of its surface. The symbols were still there, frozen in their readable configuration, but they seemed to be waiting. Waiting for what? He wasn't sure. "You really think we can do this?" Chen asked quietly. "Every expedition to a builder site has ended badly. Either the teams found nothing, or they triggered defenses they couldn't stop. Those teams were looking at the sites the way they'd been trained to look," Jake replied, "with preconceptions about how ancient technology should work, with assumptions based on their own cultural frameworks. The builders didn't think like us. They didn't think like any modern species. We need to stop trying to apply our logic to their creations. That's easy to say, hard to do. That's why humans might have an advantage." Jake set the tablet down. "We're newcomers to galactic civilization. We don't have centuries of ingrained assumptions about how things should work. We're still figuring everything out. That makes us flexible in ways older species aren't." Chen smiled slightly. "The Council calls that recklessness. The Council has been fighting this war for 3 years and losing ground every month. Maybe recklessness is what we need." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Jake oversaw the loading of supplies onto the Swift Current while meeting briefly with each team member. Lieutenant Parker was exactly as his file suggested, confident to the point of cocky, but with the skills to back it up. Dr. Grant was intense and focused, already asking detailed questions about the tablet's symbols. Revik, the Tholin engineer, communicated through a translator device that rendered his bioluminescent patterns into speech, his enthusiasm for builder technology evident in every translated word. Sergeant Collins was all business, conducting a security sweep of the ship before they'd even officially launched. A balanced team. A capable team. But capable enough? As Jake boarded the Swift Current, Captain Hayes met him at the airlock. She handed him a sealed data chip. "Emergency protocols," she said. "If you encounter anything you can't handle, if the Krell find you, if this mission goes sideways in any way, those are your extraction codes and fallback positions." "Thank you, Captain." Hayes studied his face. "Morrison, you don't have to prove anything. You found the vault's location. That's already more than anyone expected. You could hand this mission to a senior team and return to regular duty." "With respect, Captain, I don't think a senior team would succeed. This needs people who can improvise, who can look at ancient alien technology and see possibilities instead of protocols. That's what worries me," Hayes said, but there was a hint of a smile in her expression. "Good luck, Commander. Bring everyone home." The Swift Current detached from the Defiance at 2:0400 hours. On the bridge, Parker guided the ship away from the carrier with practiced ease, his hands moving across the controls like he was playing an instrument. The outer reaches lay ahead of them, weeks of travel through increasingly empty space. "Course laid in," Parker announced. "We'll reach the target system in 18 days if we push the engines. 20 if we play it safe. 18, Jake decided. The longer we take, the more chance the Krell have of detecting us. Dr. Grant had already set up a workstation in the ship's small laboratory. Jake found her there after the jump to faster-than-light travel was complete, the tablet connected to analysis equipment that hummed and beeped constantly. "Learning anything new?" he asked. "Everything and nothing," Grant replied without looking up. "The symbols are revealing more information the longer I study them. But it's like they're choosing what to show me. Watch." She touched the tablet's surface and a new set of symbols appeared, rotating slowly. These weren't visible before. They describe a locking mechanism, some kind of security protocol, but when I try to access deeper layers, the tablet goes dark. "Maybe it's waiting for us to reach the vault," Jake suggested. "Maybe it only reveals what we need when we need it. That would imply the tablet is somehow aware, responsive to context and location." Grant finally looked at him. "Commander, that level of sophistication in a handheld device, we can't even begin to replicate that with current technology. The builders were beyond us in every way," Jake acknowledged. "But they still wanted someone to find their vault. They left breadcrumbs. They made it possible. Just difficult. Why, though? Why hide advanced technology and then leave clues? Why not just share it openly?" Jake had been pondering that question since they'd found the tablet. Maybe because sharing it openly would have led to war. Species fighting over builder tech trying to claim it exclusively? By hiding it and requiring specific qualities to find it, they ensured only someone worthy would gain access. And you think humans are worthy? I think humans are different enough to try approaches that haven't been tried before. Whether that makes us worthy, we'll find out. The days in faster-than-light travel blended together. Jake established a routine: bridge duty, studying the tablet with Grant, reviewing tactical scenarios with Collins, checking engineering reports with Revik. Parker kept the ship running smoothly, his irreverent humor keeping morale up during the long, monotonous journey. On day 12, they encountered their first problem. The Swift Current dropped out of faster-than-light near a refueling depot, an automated station that serviced ships traveling the outer reaches. As they approached, Revik's sensors detected another vessel docked there. Krell scout ship, Collins identified from the tactical station. Small, two-person crew, most likely. They haven't seen us yet. Jake considered their options. They needed fuel to reach the vault system. But engaging the Krell, even in a minor skirmish, would alert enemy forces to their presence in this region. On the other hand, avoiding the depot would mean turning back or finding another fuel source, adding weeks to their journey. "Can we refuel without them noticing?" he asked Parker. The pilot studied his console. "Maybe. The depot has multiple docking points. If we come in on the far side, use passive systems only, we might be able to top off our tanks and leave before they realize we're here. Do it." Parker maneuvered the swift current with delicate precision, using minimal thrusters and letting momentum carry them toward the depot's far side. Revike shut down all non-essential systems, reducing their energy signature to almost nothing. On the tactical display, the Krell ship remained stationary, its crew likely resting or conducting maintenance. The docking procedure took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of nerve-wracking silence as fuel pumped into their tanks at a deliberately slow rate to avoid creating detectable vibrations. Jake watched the Krell vessel the entire time, waiting for any sign that they'd been discovered. The fuel transfer completed. Parker began the undocking sequence just as slowly, easing the swift current away from the depot centimeter by centimeter. They were 500 meters clear when the Krell ship's engines suddenly flared to life. "They're powering up," Collins reported. "Weapons coming online." "Evasive," Jake ordered. Parker didn't hesitate. The swift current's engines roared to full power, pushing the ship away from the depot in a tight spiral. Weapons fire lanced through the space they'd occupied seconds before, bright orange bolts that would have crippled their ship if they'd connected. "They're pursuing," Collins said. "Matching our acceleration. Can we outrun them?" Jake asked. "Not in normal space," Parker replied, his hands flying across the controls. "But we're faster and faster than light. If I can get enough distance for a safe jump, more weapons fire streaked past." The swift current shook as one bolt clipped their aft shielding. Damage alerts flashed across Revik's engineering console. "Shields at 70%, the Thalan reported. "We can take maybe 3 more hits before they fail." Jake made a decision. "Parker, emergency jump. Now, we're too close to the depot's gravity well. The calculations, now, Lieutenant." Parker's face went pale, but he initiated the jump sequence. The ship's faster-than-light drive whined as it struggled to engage, fighting against the gravitational interference from the depot's massive structure. The Krell ship fired again. The bolts slammed into their shields, dropping them to 40%. The faster-than-light drive caught. Reality twisted, and the swift current lurched into faster-than-light space. The transition so violent that everyone was thrown against the restraints. Alarms screamed. The lights flickered. For a terrifying moment, Jake thought they'd torn the ship apart. Then the shaking stopped. The alarms quieted. They were through, traveling faster than light, the depot and the Krell scout left far behind in normal space. "Status," Jake gasped, catching his breath. "We're intact," Revik said, sounding amazed. The jump was rough, but the ship held together. "We are, however, off course. The emergency jump sent us in a random direction." "Where are we?" Grant asked from the doorway. She'd come running from the lab at the first sign of trouble. Parker checked his navigation console. His expression shifted from relief to confusion, to something like wonder. "According to these readings, we jumped 17 light years in a completely unplanned vector. We should be nowhere near anything important." "But," Jake prompted, "but we're 2 days from the target system. That emergency jump, completely random, put us almost exactly where we needed to be. The odds of that are astronomical." Everyone was silent for a moment. Jake looked at Dr. Grant. She was staring at the tablet which she'd brought with her from the lab. Its symbols were glowing brighter than before, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. "The tablet activated during the jump," Grant said quietly. "I felt it, like it was guiding us." "That's impossible," Revik protested. "A navigation system that's sophisticated, that's subtle, operating independently." "The builders did nothing small," Jake said. "If they wanted to ensure the right people reached the vault, maybe they built safeguards. Maybe the tablet is more than just a map. Maybe it's an active guide." Collins checked her sensors. "No pursuit. The Krell scout can't track us through faster-than-light space. We're clear." Jake stood, gripping the back of his command chair to steady himself. "Parker, bring us out of faster-than-light at the edge of the target system. We approach the rest of the way on conventional drives."
"Revik, I want a full diagnostic on the ship."
"Everyone else, get some rest. We're about to find out if this journey was worth it." 2 days later, the swift current dropped back into normal space at the edge of System 8847. Jay, the brown dwarf star hung in the distance, a dim red sphere barely bright enough to illuminate the debris field surrounding it. Thousands of asteroids tumbled through the darkness, colliding and fragmenting in an endless, chaotic dance. That's the vault? Parker said skeptically. Looks like every other dead system in the outer reaches. But Dr. Grant was already at her console, cross-referencing the tablet's data with their sensor readings. There, she said, highlighting a specific region of the debris field. That cluster of asteroids. The tablet is showing me power signatures. Faint, but definitely there. Something in that cluster is active. Jake studied the tactical display. The debris field was dense, dangerous to navigate. Any one of those tumbling rocks could destroy their ship if they collided at the wrong angle. Can we get a closer scan? Revik worked his controls. Negative. Too much interference from the stellar radiation and magnetic fields. We will have to go in blind. Then we go in blind, Jake decided. Parker, take us into the cluster. Slow and careful. Collins, watch for any automated defenses. Revik, keep the shields at maximum. Grant, tell me if the tablet shows us anything helpful. The swift current entered the debris field like a swimmer entering dark water. Parker's skill was immediately apparent. He threaded the ship between tumbling asteroids, using minimal thrust to avoid creating excessive turbulence. Several times, Jake held his breath as massive rocks passed within meters of their hull. The power signatures are getting stronger, Grant reported. Multiple sources, all concentrated in the center of this cluster. The tablet is showing me corridors, passages through the debris field, safe routes. Feed them to navigation, Jake ordered. Grant transmitted the data. Parker's console lit up with recommended courses, pathways through the chaos that the tablet somehow knew would be clear. The pilot followed them with increasing confidence, and the swift current penetrated deeper into the cluster. After 30 tense minutes, they emerged into a clearing. In the center, protected by the surrounding asteroids like a pearl in an oyster, floated a structure that took Jake's breath away. The vault. It was massive, larger than any human space station. Smooth black surfaces reflected the brown dwarf's dim light, covered in the same symbols that marked the tablet. The structure was roughly spherical, but its geometry was wrong, impossible. Angles that shouldn't connect did. Surfaces that appeared flat, curved in ways that made Jake's eyes hurt. "It's beautiful," Grant whispered. "It's terrifying," Collins countered. "I'm reading energy signatures all over that thing. Weapons, defensive systems, things I can't identify. This place is armed." "Of course it is," Jake said. "The question is whether it will recognize us as authorized visitors or intruders." "Grant, what's the tablet telling you?" Grant held the artifact up. Its glow had intensified, the symbols now bright enough to illuminate her face. "There's an access point, a docking port on the equatorial section. The tablet is providing authentication codes, access protocols." "Then that's where we dock," Jake said. "Parker, bring us in." The swift current approached the vault slowly. As they drew near, portions of the black surface began to glow, matching the symbols on the tablet. A section of the hull irised open, revealing a docking bay that was perfectly sized for their ship. Two perfectly sized, like it had been expecting them. Parker guided them in with steady hands. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk that resonated through the hull. Outside the viewport, the bay doors closed, sealing them inside. Lights activated, flooding the bay with illumination that shifted through colors human eyes couldn't quite focus on. "Atmosphere is registering as breathable," Revik reported. "Gravity, approximately standard. Temperature, comfortable. This place is maintaining life support." "After thousands of years," Collins said, "the power requirements for that would be enormous." "The builders had power sources we still don't understand," Grant reminded her. "This is active, waiting, ready." Jake stood and checked his sidearm, more out of habit than any real expectation it would help against builder defenses. "Collins, Grant, you're with me. Parker, Revik, stay with the ship and monitor our status. If anything goes wrong, if we're not back in 3 hours, leave without us." "Commander," Parker began. That's an order, Lieutenant. This mission is too important. If we can't make it through whatever's in there, the tablet and the data we've gathered go back to the Alliance. Someone else tries. Parker nodded reluctantly. Understood, sir. Good luck. Jake, Collins, and Grant stood at the airlock. The sergeant had her rifle ready, though Jake suspected it would be useless against whatever waited ahead. Grant clutched the tablet like a lifeline. Jake took a deep breath and opened the exterior hatch. The docking bay beyond was pristine. No dust, no debris, no sign of age despite millennia of abandonment. The walls were covered in those impossible symbols glowing softly in patterns that seemed to shift when Jake wasn't looking directly at them. At the far end of the bay, a corridor entrance waited, outlined in pulsing light. They moved forward cautiously. Every footstep echoed despite the walls seeming to absorb sound. The air smelled of nothing, perfectly neutral, perfectly clean. It was deeply unnatural. The corridor entrance activated as they approached. The light intensified, and suddenly Jake was seeing more than just the physical passage. Information flooded his mind. Images, concepts, feelings. The builders welcoming visitors. The builders testing worthiness. The builders waiting for minds capable of understanding. He staggered, and Collins caught his arm. Commander? I'm okay, Jake said, though he wasn't sure that was true. The vault is communicating. Not with words, but with direct information transfer. Did you feel it? No, Collins said. Just you? Grant was staring at her tablet. The artifact is resonating with the vault's systems. It's amplifying some kind of signal. Jake, I think it's using you as a receiver, transmitting through you because human neurology processes information differently than other species. That doesn't sound safe, Collins observed. Probably isn't, Jake agreed, but it's why we're here. Come on. They entered the corridor. It stretched ahead for what seemed like miles, though Jake's sense of distance kept distorting. The walls showed scenes, histories, moments from the builder's civilization. He saw vast cities of impossible architecture. He saw battles against enemies he couldn't identify. He saw the construction of the vault, hundreds of builders working in perfect coordination to create this repository. And he saw why they'd built it, why they'd hidden it, why they'd left it for others to find. The builders had known they were dying, not from war or disaster, but from success. Their civilization had achieved everything it could achieve. They had solved every problem, answered every question, reached the limits of what was possible in their philosophical and biological framework. They had become stagnant, static, dead while still living. So they had built the vault. They had filled it with their knowledge, their technology, their culture, and they had designed it to be found only by species that were different, species that would approach problems from new angles. Species that would take builder knowledge and do something the builders themselves could never have imagined. They had built a gift for the future, a gift that required the recipient to prove they could use it wisely. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. In its center floated a crystalline sphere 10 meters in diameter covered in the flowing symbols. Around it, holographic displays showed technologies, star charts, scientific theories, cultural databases. The accumulated knowledge of the builder civilization, preserved and waiting. By all the stars, Grant breathed. It's real. It's all real. But Jake was focused on the sphere itself. It was pulsing now, the same rhythm as the tablet, calling to him, waiting for him to approach. Commander, wait, Collins said, her tactical instincts screaming warnings. We should scan this, make sure it's safe. It's not about safety, Jake replied. It's about trust. The builders are asking if we trust them, if we're willing to take a leap of faith. He walked forward. The sphere's light intensified, and Jake felt the information transfer begin again. But this time it was overwhelming. Technologies for faster-than-light travel that made current drives look primitive. Energy generation systems that could power entire civilizations. Medical knowledge that could eliminate disease, agricultural techniques that could end hunger, weapons that could end wars or start them, defensive systems that could protect entire star systems, and woven through it all, warnings, cautions. The builders explaining that knowledge without wisdom led to destruction, That power without responsibility led to tyranny, that any species that gained access to this vault would have a choice: use the knowledge to build or use it to destroy. The builders couldn't make that choice for humanity. They could only present the option and hope they'd chosen well. Jake reached out and touched the sphere. The moment his fingers made contact, everything changed. The knowledge wasn't just flowing into his mind anymore. It was being recorded, copied, transferred to the tablet Grant held. The vault was downloading itself, condensing millennia of builder achievement into a format humans could study, understand, and apply. The process took seconds but felt like hours. When it was complete, Jake stumbled backward, and Collins caught him before he fell. The sphere's light faded to a gentle glow. The holographic displays dimmed. The vault had given them everything. "Jake," Grant said urgently, "are you all right?" "I saw it all," he whispered. "Everything they were. Everything they knew. It's in the tablet now. We have it." "Then we need to leave," Collins said firmly, "before something goes wrong. Before the Krell somehow find us. We have what we came for." They made their way back through the corridor, which now seemed shorter, easier to navigate. The vault was letting them go, satisfied that it had found worthy recipients for its knowledge. As they reached the docking bay, Jake looked back one final time. The symbols on the walls had changed. Instead of the flowing, incomprehensible patterns, they now showed simple words in human languages. "Good luck. Build well. Remember us." The builder's final message, the last words of a civilization that had chosen to die so that others might live differently. Jake carried those words with him as they boarded the swift current. As Parker initiated the launch sequence and guided them out of the vault and through the debris field. As they jumped to faster-than-light travel and began the long journey back to the Alliance, the tablet sat in the laboratory, now containing information that would change everything. Technologies that could end the war, knowledge that could reshape civilization, the future of humanity and every Alliance species, all stored in a device small enough to hold in one hand. Dr. Grant worked constantly, beginning the enormous task of cataloging and organizing the data. Revik assisted, his engineering expertise helping to identify practical applications for the technologies. Collins maintained security, paranoid about Krell interception despite their quiet journey. Parker flew them home with unwavering focus, and Jake sat in the command chair thinking about responsibility, about the weight of what they'd discovered, about the choice the builders had left for humanity. On the 15th day of their return journey, they received a transmission from the Defiance. Captain Hayes' voice crackled through with barely suppressed urgency. "Commander Morrison, the tactical situation has deteriorated significantly. The Krell have launched a major offensive. Multiple systems have fallen. We're pulling back to defensive positions around the core worlds. What's your status?" Jake considered how to answer. They had the vault's knowledge. They had weapons that could turn the tide of the war. They had the power to save the Alliance. Or they had the power to make things far, far worse. "Captain, we successfully accessed the vault. We have the builder database. But Hayes, what we found, it's not simple. It's not just weapons or shields. It's a complete technological revolution. If we deploy this without understanding it, without being ready for it, we could cause more harm than good. Commander, we don't have time for caution. Our people are dying. If you have something that can help, we need it now." Jake looked at Grant, who had stopped her work to listen. She nodded slowly, understanding the dilemma. "Captain, I'm recommending we share."